There is a brown envelope in the bottom drawer of my nightstand, sealed, creased at the corner, with my father's handwriting across the front. Just 2 words, "Thank you." I have not opened it in 5 weeks. Every time I reach for it, something tightens behind my ribs, like my lungs forgot how to work, which does not make any medical sense, but there it is. To explain what is inside that envelope and why it nearly cost me my family, I need to take you back to a Wednesday in November. November the 8th, if we are being exact. And with this story, we are going to be exact, because the details matter. Every last one of them. So picture this. I am pulling onto Hillside Avenue in Duluth, Minnesota. Little Cape Cod house, 3 bedrooms, 1,480 square feet of pure stubbornness. The maple tree out front had already dropped most of its leaves, and they were plastered to the driveway in that wet, defeated way leaves get when November finally wins. The gutters needed cleaning. They always needed cleaning. I am convinced gutters were invented by someone who personally hated homeowners and wanted to give them one more thing to feel guilty about every time they pulled into the driveway. I had a trunk full of groceries and my father's blood pressure medication. Marge, my mom, had mentioned they were running low on a few things. And a few things, in Marge Kowalski language, means the pantry looks like a crime scene and the fridge has 1 egg and a jar of mustard, but she would rather eat crackers for a week than ask anyone for help. That woman once drove herself to urgent care with a sprained ankle because she did not want to bother anyone on a Saturday. The apple does not fall far. I once worked a 12-hour shift at the clinic with 101 fever because I did not want to call in and leave the records department short-staffed. We are a stubborn family. That part is relevant. My name is Ray Kowalski. I am 34 years old. I work as a patient record specialist at a community health clinic in Duluth, which is a fancy way of saying I spend 40 hours a week reading documents that other people skip. Fine print, footnotes, discharge summaries filed 60 days after the original paperwork that nobody thought to check. My boss once told me I had the personality of an audit. I chose to take that as a compliment. I drive a 2017 Toyota Camry with a scratch along the passenger side that I keep telling myself I will fix. I have a cat named Gus who is 14 years old and whose primary hobby is pushing pens off my nightstand at 3 in the morning. And in the trunk of my car, right next to the groceries, there is a plastic bin full of file folders because I am the kind of person who keeps every document related to anything, organized alphabetically, just in case. That bin is the reason I still have a family, but I am getting ahead of myself. I turned onto Hillside Avenue, and the first thing I saw was a car I did not recognize. Silver sedan, parked right in front of the house, and a man standing in the yard. My parents' yard. He was holding a clipboard and a camera, taking photographs of the house like he was cataloging it for a museum exhibit. The front porch, the roof line, the ramp I had paid $5,800 to have installed by the front door after my father's stroke. He was photographing the accessibility ramp. That detail still makes my jaw tight. And then I saw my mother. Marge was standing behind the screen door, not on the porch, not waving the way she always does when she sees my Camry turn the corner. Just standing there, one hand on the doorframe, and when I got close enough to see her face, she looked away. My mother has never looked away from me. Not when I told her I was dropping my master's program. Not when I showed up at her kitchen door at 1 in the morning after my worst breakup, mascara halfway down my face. That woman has looked me dead in the eye through every failure and every mess I have ever made. But that Wednesday afternoon in November, Marge Kowalski could not hold my gaze for half a second. Her hands were gripping the doorframe and they were shaking. Not the familiar tremble from the arthritis that has been in her fingers for years. This was different. This was fear. I parked crooked, did not even pull all the way in, just stopped the car and got out. "Excuse me, can I help you?" The man turned around. Mid-40s, khakis, company polo, clipboard with a logo I did not recognize. His name, I found out later, was Phil Bremer. But in that moment, he was just the man with the clipboard, and I was not in a friendly mood. He was polite, I will give him that. Professional, said he was a licensed property appraiser, here for a scheduled evaluation. Scheduled by who? He checked his paperwork, flipped a page, ran his finger down the sheet. Kowalski Property Group. Contact name. He squinted at the print. Dean Kowalski. My stomach dropped through the driveway gravel and kept going somewhere toward the center of the earth. Dean Kowalski. My older brother. My parents' golden child. The man who had not contributed a single cent to this house. Not the $131,800 I pulled from my life savings for the down payment and renovations. Not the $187.41 in monthly property tax. Not the $5,800 ramp. Not the $4,900 bathroom grab bars. Not even the $35 welcome mat that said home on it, which I bought at Target on a Tuesday because the old one was falling apart and nobody else was going to do it. Dean had sent an appraiser to my parents' house without telling me, without telling them. I looked at my mother behind that screen door. She met my eyes for about half a second, then looked down at her hands. She already knew who sent him, and she was afraid to say it out loud. I sent Phil Bremer, the appraiser, on his way. Politely. Mostly politely. There might have been a tone. My mother always said I got my tone from my father's side of the family, which is her way of admitting she also has a tone, but would rather blame it on genetics than take ownership. Phil closed his clipboard, nodded like a man who had been on the receiving end of a tone before, and walked to his silver sedan without argument. Smart man, Phil. I brought the groceries inside, put the milk in the fridge, lined up the canned soup in the pantry the way Marge likes it, labels facing out, because even in the middle of whatever this was, Marge Kowalski's pantry has standards. I set my father's blood pressure medication on the counter next to the pill organizer I had bought him 6 months ago, the one with the days of the week printed in extra-large font, because Hank Kowalski will admit to needing reading glasses approximately never. Marge was sitting at the kitchen table. She had a dish towel in her hands, and she was wiping the table in slow circles. Left side, right side, center, left side again. This is what Marge does when she is upset. Other people pace. Other people pour a drink. My mother cleans a surface that is already clean and pretends everything is fine. Mom, why was that man here? She did not look up. She moved the towel to the right side of the table. Dean said it was just a routine thing. There is no such thing as a routine appraisal when nobody asked for one. She did not answer. She wiped the center of the table again. The table was so clean you could have performed surgery on it. My dad, Hank, was in the living room. He was in his recliner by the window, the one angled so he could see Lake Superior on clear days, though today the lake was just a gray smear behind November clouds. Hank had had a mild stroke 9 months before. Right side weakness. Uses a cane now, the aluminum kind from the VA clinic, not the wooden one I tried to buy him because he said it made him look like he was going to a costume party. His speech is mostly fine, but he gets tired fast, and when the right side of his face is not cooperating, his words come out a little thick, a little slow, like they are wading through something heavy. He was watching the Weather Channel with the volume at 42, which is Hank Kowalski's version of not wanting to hear the conversation in the kitchen. 36 years as a welder at the shipyard, crawling through hulls and engine rooms, and the man's hearing is fine. He just chooses not to use it when things get uncomfortable. I walked back outside and sat in my Camry in the driveway. Frost was starting to creep along the edges of the windshield. I called Dean. He picked up on the fourth ring. Casual? Easy. Like I had called to chat about the Vikings game. Hey Ray, what is up? Want to explain why there was an appraiser at Mom and Dad's house today? Oh, that. Like I had asked about a parking ticket. Yeah, I have been looking into some things. The neighborhood has appreciated a lot the last couple of years. Did you know that house could go for around $410,000 now? Dean, that house is not for sale. Nobody said it was. I am just exploring options. It is responsible to know what your assets are worth. Your assets. The word your did the heavy lifting in that sentence, and it carried it like a forklift. I paid $131,800 of my own money for that house. Every dollar I had saved from 7 years of working at the clinic. 7 years of packing lunches in Tupperware containers, driving a scratched Camry, and taking exactly one vacation, which was a long weekend in Bayfield, where I stayed in a motel that smelled like pine cleaner and regret. I had $4,800 left in my checking account after the purchase and renovations. That is one emergency room visit and maybe 2 tanks of gas if I drive gently. Dean's financial contribution to our parents' housing situation? $0. $0. 0 cents. He did send a fruit basket once for Christmas. From Costco. The big one with the dried cranberries that nobody eats. They sat in the pantry until March. And then Marge quietly threw them away and never mentioned it. which is the most Marge Kowalski thing I have ever witnessed. Dean, whose name is on the deed? A pause. The kind of pause that has fingerprints on it. Both of ours. For estate planning purposes. I felt something cold slide down my spine that had nothing to do with the November air coming through the car vents. Both of ours. I did not know Dean had put his name on the deed. I knew he had helped with the paperwork during the closing process. He worked as a real estate broker at Lakeshore Commercial Partners in Minneapolis. So when he offered to make sure everything was filed correctly, I figured he was being a helpful big brother, doing his thing, using his expertise. I even thanked him. I remember saying, "Thank you, Dean. This would have taken me forever." And he had smiled and said, "That is what family is for, Ray." Turns out what family was for, apparently, was adding yourself as co-owner of a house you never paid a dime for while your little sister was busy being grateful. I hung up the phone. The groceries were put away. Marge was inside wiping a table that had never been cleaner. Hank was watching a cold front move across North Dakota at maximum volume. And I was sitting in a driveway in Duluth, Minnesota, with frost on my windshield and something cracking open in my chest, wondering if my own brother had been stealing from me in slow motion since the day I signed that closing contract. Here is the thing, and I need to be honest about this. Part of me, right there in that freezing car, was already making excuses for him. Maybe it really was for estate planning. Maybe he was just being thorough. Maybe I was overreacting. Dean was the older sibling, the one with the real estate career, the one our parents always said had a head for business. I was the one who alphabetized patient discharge files for a living. What did I know about deeds and property law? Plenty, as it turned out. But I did not know that yet. And the thing I really did not know, the thing that would have made me lock my car doors and drive straight to a lawyer's office that very afternoon, was that Dean had not acted alone. Over the next 2 weeks, Dean started visiting our parents more than he had in the previous 2 years combined. And every single time he brought his daughter Lily, who was 5 years old and basically a weaponized charm offensive in fur-lined boots. I want to be clear, I love my niece. Lily is a sweet kid who draws butterflies with too many wings and calls spaghetti paschetti, and none of what happened is her fault. But Dean used that child like a chess piece, and I will never fully forgive him for it. Here is how it worked. Dean would pull into the driveway in his leased BMW X3, a car that cost more per month than our parents' property tax, which is a comparison I will never stop making. Lily would burst out of the back seat, run up the ramp I paid for, and throw herself onto Hank's lap in the recliner. His good side. She knew which side. Dean had taught her which side, and if you do not think that is calculated, you have not met my brother. Lily would show Hank whatever she had drawn at kindergarten that day, a house with a purple roof, a cat that looked like a potato with legs. Hank would light up. His whole face would change. The right side that usually dragged a little would lift, and for a few minutes, he looked like the man he was before the stroke. Younger, brighter, present in a way that the Weather Channel at volume 42 did not allow. And while Hank was distracted by crayon butterflies with 7 wings, Dean would be at the kitchen table with Marge, talking numbers. "The property taxes are going up, Mom. The roof is going to need work again in a couple of years. Dad's physical therapy is not getting any cheaper. Have you thought about something smaller? More manageable?" More manageable. That was Dean's favorite phrase during those 2 weeks. He said it the way a salesman says affordable, which is to say with a smile that costs more than the product. There is a nice apartment complex in Superior, 1 bedroom, ground floor, very affordable. A 1-bedroom apartment in Superior, Wisconsin for 2 people, one of whom uses a cane and needs a bathroom, with grab bars that I personally paid $4,900 to have installed. Superior is 23 minutes from the VA neurology clinic, where Hank has his follow-ups. Hillside Avenue is 14. That is 9 minutes, which does not sound like much until you are 69 years old with right side weakness and the weather is doing what Minnesota weather does in January, which is try to kill you. But Dean did not mention the 9 minutes. Dean did not mention the grab bars. Dean mentioned square footage and monthly costs, and something about equity. And Marge listened because Marge has spent her entire life believing that her oldest child has a head for business. Now, this has absolutely nothing to do with the story, but Dean's wife, Tiffany, once asked me if Duluth was basically Canada. We are 60 miles from the border. 60. I have never fully recovered from that conversation. She also thought Lake Superior was a river. A river. It is the largest freshwater lake by surface area on the planet, Tiffany. But sure, basically a river. This is the woman who posted a photograph on her social media that same week. A photograph of herself and my mother at the kitchen table on Hillside Avenue, both smiling. Tiffany had done Marge's hair, which admittedly looked nice, and the caption read, "Family is everything," with a pink heart emoji. Family is everything. While her husband was planning to sell my mother's house out from under her and relocate her to a one-bedroom in Superior, Wisconsin, 23 minutes from the VA clinic instead of 14. I will tell you what Tiffany did contribute to the family. She threw a gender reveal party for Lily that cost more than 3 months of our parents' property tax. She remodeled her kitchen twice and posted about the quartz countertops like she had personally quarried the stone from a mountainside in Italy. She once spent $400 on a throw pillow, a single pillow, for throwing. Meanwhile, Dean's total financial contribution to our parents' housing situation remained at $0.00, plus one Costco fruit basket with dried cranberries that ended up in the garbage in March. Must be nice when your entire contribution to your aging parents is dehydrated fruit and a social media caption. But here is what was happening beneath the surface, the part I did not see until later. Dean was not just visiting, he was building a case. Every time he sat at that kitchen table and talked about costs and downsizing and manageable living, he was planting seeds. And Marge, my stubborn, proud, do not bother anyone mother, was starting to water them. She called me on a Thursday evening. She sounded like someone had let the air out of her, like a tire with a slow leak, still holding shape but losing pressure by the minute. "Ray, Dean says we should think about selling the house." 6 words. Each one landed like a small stone dropped into still water. "Mom, that is your house. I bought it for you." "Dean says his name is on the papers too, honey. He says it is complicated." "It is not complicated. I paid for it. All of it." Dean paid for nothing. Silence. Not empty silence. Full silence. The dish towel ringing, table wiping, "I know you are right, but I cannot say it out loud" kind of silence that Marge Kowalski has perfected over 66 years of stubborn living. "He is your brother, Ray." And there it was. The sentence that has shut down every argument in the Kowalski family for 30 years. He is your brother. As if sharing DNA with someone means they cannot also rob you. As if being related is a permission slip for betrayal. That sentence has been a locked door in our family my entire life, and I was getting very tired of standing on the wrong side of it. I should have known what was coming next, because Dean Kowalski has been running the same playbook his entire life. When confronted, do not defend. Attack. Redirect. Make the other person the problem. He has been doing it since we were kids, and he is better at it than anyone I have ever met, including the insurance adjusters I deal with at work, and those people lie professionally. After we hung up, Dean called our mom. Not later. Not the next day. Immediately. I know this because Marge called me 43 minutes after my conversation with Dean, and she was already mid-sentence when I answered. "Raylyn Marie Kowalski, why are you trying to tear this family apart?" Raylyn Marie. The full name. That is the Marge Kowalski equivalent of a judge bringing down a gavel. She has not used my full name since I was 16, and she found a dented can of beer in my backpack, which for the record was not mine. It was Jenny Halverson's. I took the fall because Jenny was already grounded and I felt sorry for her. 30 years of injustice over a beer I never even drank. But that is a different story. Dean had called Marge and told her I was creating drama, that I was jealous of his career, that I was trying to turn our parents against their own son. He had used the phrase, "she is not thinking clearly," which is a particularly nasty trick because it takes a legitimate concern and reframes it as instability. It is the conversational equivalent of pulling the rug out from under someone and then asking why they are on the floor. He had also, I found out later, used the phrase, "she has been under a lot of stress at work," which was technically true. I am always under stress at work, but Dean said it the way you say someone has been drinking, like it explains everything and excuses everyone. My own mother was now angry at me. Not at the man who had added his name to a deed he never paid for. Not at the brother who was trying to sell her house and pocket the profit. At me, for noticing. There is a particular kind of loneliness that comes from being the person in a family who sees the problem and gets punished for pointing it out. It is not dramatic loneliness. It is not the kind they make movies about. It is quiet, and it sits in your chest like a stone. And it makes you wonder if maybe everyone else is right, and you really are the difficult one. I drove to work the next morning with my jaw clenched so tight I am surprised I did not crack a molar. The clinic parking lot was half empty because it was early, and I sat in my Camry for a few minutes with the engine off, watching my breath fog up the windshield. The scratch on the passenger side caught the morning light, and I thought, I should really get that fixed. I have been thinking that for 2 years. I will probably think it for 2 more. I spent the first hour at my desk not working, just staring at a patient records spreadsheet about insurance coding discrepancies without seeing a single cell. My coworker Connie walked by with a stack of files and said, "You look like you did not sleep." I said, "I am fine," which is the workplace equivalent of everything is on fire, but I am contractually obligated to pretend otherwise. Here is something about Dean that you need to understand in order to understand the rest of this story. My brother has been confident his entire life, not the quiet kind of confidence that comes from competence, the loud kind. The kind that fills a room and makes everyone else shrink a little without noticing. Dean once convinced our parents he needed $7,200 for a leadership development conference in Scottsdale, Arizona. Professional development, he said, networking opportunities, career advancement. Our parents scraped the money together from savings they did not have much of. Dean flew to Scottsdale, played golf for 4 days at a resort with a pool shaped like a cactus, and came home with a tan and a polo shirt with the resort logo on it. To this day, our mother thinks it was a conference. She has the fake certificate he printed from the internet framed in the hallway. Framed. In the hallway. Right next to my high school diploma and a photograph of Hank's Union local bowling team from 1997. Dean could sell shade in a forest. He could sell ice to a glacier and then bill you for delivery. He once returned a used lawnmower to a hardware store 3 months after purchase and somehow walked out with a full refund and a gift card. The man has a gift, and the gift is that people believe him because he speaks with the kind of certainty that most people only feel about gravity. That is what I was up against. Not just a brother who had put his name on a deed he had no right to. A brother who could make our own mother think I was the villain for questioning it. But here's what Dean did not account for. He did not account for the fact that I am stubborn. He did not account for the fact that I read documents for a living and I notice when things do not add up. And he absolutely did not account for a phone call that was about to come in on a Sunday evening from a 69-year-old man in a recliner, watching the weather, who was about to say 3 words that changed everything. Sunday evening, my phone buzzed on the kitchen counter next to a half-eaten bowl of soup that I had lost interest in around the 3rd spoonful. The screen said, "Dad." Hank Kowalski does not call often. He is not a phone person. He is barely a conversation person. 36 years of welding in shipyard engine rooms where the noise was so loud you communicated in hand signals and head nods had made him a man of extraordinary efficiency with words. Hank does not say things he does not mean, and he does not use 3 words when 2 will do, or 2 words when a look will do, or a look when silence will do. If Hank Kowalski is calling you on the telephone, something matters. I picked up. "Hey, Ray." His voice was thick, heavier than usual. The right side of his face was not cooperating tonight. The words came out a little slow, a little rounded at the edges, like they had to push through something to get out. On good days, you would not notice anything. On tired days, on cold days, on days when the barometric pressure dropped the way it does in Duluth every November, like clockwork, Hank sounded like a man carrying something invisible and heavy. "Hey, Dad." VA clinic sent a reminder. Got my neurology follow-up next month. The one where they check the, He paused. The word he was looking for was probably cognitive or neurological, but Hank Kowalski has never in his life used a medical term when he could avoid it. "The brain stuff," he said finally. "I know, Dad. I have it on my calendar. Clinic is 14 minutes from the house. I timed it. Good traffic day." "That is close, Dad. That is convenient." "I know." Silence. Not the uncomfortable kind. The Hank kind. The kind where he is gathering something up inside himself, turning it over the way he used to turn a weld seam in his hands, inspecting it from every angle before committing. I have learned not to rush those silences. They are where the real things live. Then, quieter, almost like he did not want the house itself to hear. I like this house, Ray. 3 words. I like this house. From a man who spent 36 years crawling into ship hulls and welding joints in spaces so tight he could not lift his arms above his shoulders. A man who came home every night smelling like metal in flux and never once complained about a single day of it. Who raised 2 kids on a welder's salary and a union pension and considered himself lucky. Who had only cried twice in my entire life. Once, when his own father died, a heart attack at the kitchen table on a Tuesday morning, and once when the Minnesota Vikings lost the NFC Championship to the Eagles on that last-second field goal that I am still not over either, Dad, for what it is worth. Hank Kowalski does not say things unless he means them down to the marrow of his bones, and he had just told me, in 3 words, everything I needed to know. He liked this house, the house where the ramp let him get up the steps without help, the house where the grab bars in the bathroom meant he did not have to worry about falling when Marge was not there, the house that was 14 minutes from the VA clinic, the house with the window in the living room where he could see the lake on clear days, the house where the recliner was angled just right and the Weather Channel was always on, and the kitchen smelled like whatever Marge was making for dinner, and everything was exactly where it was supposed to be. He liked this house. He needed this house. And his son was trying to sell it for a profit he had not earned a single cent of. Dad, I do not think you should sign anything. Anything Dean puts in front of you. Any paper, any form, anything at all. Can you do that for me? Just do not sign anything until I figure some things out. Silence again. Longer this time. I could hear the Weather Channel in the background, the volume lower than usual. Maybe 30. Hank had turned it down for this call. That fact alone almost broke me. Okay, baby girl. 2 words. And they landed heavier than anything Dean had said in 2 weeks of campaigning. I hung up and sat on the floor of my bedroom. Not in a chair, not on the bed. The floor. Back against the nightstand, the one with the brown envelope that does not exist yet in this part of the story, and I stared at the wall across from me. Gus, my 14-year-old cat, appeared from whatever dimension cats disappear to when you do not need them, and materialized next to my leg. He pressed his head against my shin and purred, which is cat language, for I do not understand what is happening, but I am here. Cats have terrible timing and perfect timing simultaneously. It is their greatest skill. I cried. Not the pretty kind you see in movies where a single tear rolls down a cheekbone and the lighting is soft and someone hands you a tissue. The ugly kind. The kind where your face does things you did not know it was capable of, and your nose runs, and you make sounds that scare the cat, even though he is right there pressing his head against your leg anyway. I cried until my sinuses felt like they had been packed with wet cement. I cried until I was empty. And then, for about 10 minutes, I seriously considered giving up. Just letting it go. Letting Dean have his name on the deed. Letting him sell the house. Letting my parents end up in a 1-bedroom apartment in Superior, Wisconsin, 23 minutes from the VA clinic instead of 14, because fighting felt impossible. I was one person with $4,800 in a checking account, a scratched Camry, and a plastic bin of documents in my trunk, going up against a man who lied with the same ease that most people breathe. I almost drove to their house that night to tell them I was done. Almost picked up my keys. Almost put on my coat. Almost. But then the next morning, everything changed. And it changed because of a woman who makes coffee so strong it could strip paint off a tugboat. The turning point came on a Saturday morning, and it came because I am, and I say this with full awareness of how deeply boring it sounds, a patient record specialist. My entire job is reading documents that other people skip. Fine print, footnotes, addendums filed 60 days after the original paperwork that nobody thought to check. Insurance coding errors buried in page 9 of a 12-page discharge summary. I find them, every time. It is not a glamorous skill. Nobody has ever made a movie about a woman in a clinic office discovering a mismatched procedure code. But it is my skill, and on that Saturday morning, it became the most important thing about me. I woke up at 6:15. Gus was sitting on my chest, which is his way of saying it is breakfast time and your feelings are irrelevant. I fed him, made coffee, and then I did the thing I should have done 2 weeks earlier. I opened my filing cabinet. It is a gray metal cabinet I bought at an office surplus sale for $40. It has a dent on the top left corner and the bottom drawer sticks unless you pull it at exactly the right angle, which I have perfected over 4 years of ownership. Inside that cabinet is every piece of paper related to anything I have ever considered important. Tax returns, lease agreements, car title. And in the second drawer, in a green hanging folder labeled Hillside Avenue, every document related to my parents' house. I pulled the folder out and spread everything across my kitchen table. Gus jumped up and sat on the corner of the table like a furry, judgmental supervisor. I let him stay. I needed the moral support. The original purchase agreement. I found it first. 12 pages, signed and notarized, dated 14 months ago. Buyer listed on page 1, Ray Kowalski. Just me, only me. Not as co-buyer. Not with an and or an or followed by another name. Ray Kowalski. One name, one buyer. The closing documents. Same. Wire transfer confirmation from my bank for $93,000. The down payment from my account, my name, my money. Then the receipts. I had kept every single one because I am the kind of person who keeps every single one. The ramp installation. $5,800. Bathroom grab bars and accessibility modifications, $4,900. Roof repair, $8,200. New water heater, $2,400. Miscellaneous repairs and upgrades, $17,500. All from my checking account, all with my name. Only my name. Total renovation costs, $38,800. Total investment in the Hillside Avenue house, $131,800. I wrote that number on a piece of paper and stared at it. $131,800. 7 years of packing Tupperware lunches. 7 years of the scratched Camry. 7 years of one vacation, the Bayfield motel that smelled like pine cleaner. 7 years of saying no to things other people my age said yes to because I was saving for something that mattered more. Then I looked at the deed. Dean Kowalski was listed as co-owner. Right there. Black ink on white paper. Dean Kowalski, co-owner, Hillside Avenue property, Duluth, Minnesota. I looked at the purchase agreement again. Page 1, Ray Kowalski. Page 12, Ray Kowalski. Every page in between, Ray Kowalski. No Dean, nowhere. Not as buyer, not as co-signer, not as beneficiary, not as anything. The purchase agreement had one name and the deed had two, and those two documents were supposed to match and they did not. So how did Dean get on the deed? I called the title company, Street Lewis County Title and Escrow on East Superior Street. The woman who answered sounded like she was on her third coffee and her first headache of the day. I gave her the property address and asked for information about any amendments to the original deed filing. She put me on hold for 11 minutes. The hold music was a jazzy piano version of something I almost recognized but could not quite place, which is the specific kind of torture that hold music was designed to inflict. She came back. Yes, there is an amendment on file. Filed 55 days after the original deed recording. The amendment adds a co-owner to the property. And the authorization for that amendment? There should be a limited power of attorney on file authorizing the addition. There is, signed by the primary owner. Can you tell me who signed it? A pause. Clicking of keys. It shows your name, Ray Kowalski. My hand went cold on the phone, not figuratively, literally cold, like the blood had decided to leave my fingers and go somewhere safer. I never signed a power of attorney. I never authorized Dean to add himself to anything. I did not even know what a limited power of attorney was until that exact moment on that phone call, holding my cell phone in my kitchen with Gus sitting on the table watching me like he knew something was very wrong. My brother had forged my signature. My brother, the one who always got the first slice of pie at Thanksgiving, the one who gave the toast at our parents' 40th anniversary dinner, the one our mother still called my Dean like he was a prized possession, had committed forgery to steal half ownership of a house I paid for with every dollar I had ever saved. I sat on the kitchen floor, not a chair, the floor, back against the cabinet. Gus jumped down from the table and pressed his head against my knee. Same move as before, same purr. I do not understand what is happening, but I am here. But this time, I was not crying. This time I was thinking, because somewhere between the cold hand and the kitchen floor, something had shifted. The sadness was still there. But underneath it, rising like heat from pavement, was something else entirely. I was angry, and I was just getting started. Monday morning, I drove to the St. Louis County Recorder's office on First Street. If you have never been inside a county records office, let me paint the picture for you. Imagine a place where fluorescent lighting goes to die. Where every surface is covered in a thin film of bureaucratic patience, there is always one plant in the corner that is either fake or has given up on photosynthesis entirely. The chairs in the waiting area are the kind that were last comfortable during the Carter administration, and somewhere, always, there is a clock on the wall that ticks louder than it has any right to. I signed in at the front desk and waited. The woman behind the counter told me someone would be with me shortly, and shortly turned out to mean 14 minutes, which I know because I counted every one of them. I was not in a waiting mood. I was in the kind of mood where every minute feels like a small personal insult. The man who helped me was named Gerald Ostrowski, 57 years old, though I did not know that at the time. Wire-rimmed glasses that sat on his nose like they had been there since the 80s and had no plans to leave. A tie clip. Not ironic, not vintage, not a fashion statement. A genuine functional tie clip worn by a man who believed ties should be clipped, and that was the end of the discussion. Gerald Ostrowski looked like a man who had never once in his life used the word vibes. I told him what I needed, copies of a property deed for a specific address on Hillside Avenue, any filed amendments, and any associated power of attorney documents. He typed, slowly, methodically, the kind of typing that suggested each keystroke was considered and intentional, like he was composing a legal brief rather than running a search query. He printed some things. Typed some more, printed again. Then he gathered the papers into a neat stack, squared the edges by tapping them twice on the counter, and slid them across to me. The amendment was filed 55 days after the original deed recording, he said, without looking up. The power of attorney is on file. He paused, adjusted his glasses. Signature on the power of attorney does not match the signature on the original closing documents. I stared at him. Gerald Ostrowski looked at me over those wire-rimmed glasses that had been on his nose since Reagan was in office, and his expression did not change. Not sympathy, not alarm. Just the flat, measured look of a man who had been reading documents for longer than I had been alive and who noticed things because noticing things was what he did. I am a records clerk, he said. I am not supposed to notice things, but I notice things. Is that something I should be concerned about? He held my gaze for exactly 2 seconds. Ma'am, I am not qualified to give legal advice, but if someone filed a document with a signature that did not match the original, I would want to have a conversation with someone who is qualified. I nodded. My hands were shaking slightly, not from cold, though the building was cold, the way all government buildings in Minnesota are cold in November, as if the heating system is making a philosophical statement about the futility of warmth. My hands were shaking because Gerald Ostrowski, beautiful tie clip-wearing man, had just confirmed everything I suspected without technically confirming anything at all. But Gerald was not finished. He pointed to the stack of papers on the counter. There is one more thing you might want to look at. The amendment was not filed by the co-owner directly. It was filed by an attorney of record. Name is on the second page of the amendment filing. I flipped to the second page. My eyes scanned down past the legal language, the property description, the filing date, the notary seal, and landed on a line near the bottom. Attorney of record for the amendment filing. Victor Landry. Landry Law Office, 214 West Michigan Street, Duluth, Minnesota. The room tilted. Not literally, but something inside my inner ear or my brain or whatever part of the body is responsible for keeping the world level stopped, doing its job for about 3 seconds. Because I knew that name. Every person in the Kowalski family knew that name. Victor Landry was our family's attorney, had been for 20 years. He had helped my parents with their wills. He had handled Uncle Raymond's property dispute in Two Harbors back in 2009. He had been to Thanksgiving dinner at the Hillside Avenue house. He had sat in Hank's recliner and watched the Vikings game and eaten Marge's pumpkin pie and called her Margie, which only 4 people on earth are allowed to do. Victor Landry had helped me with the closing paperwork when I bought the house. He had sat across from me at his desk on Michigan Street, walked me through every page, pointed to every line that needed a signature, and said, "You are doing a good thing for your parents, Ray. This is a good thing." And then, 55 days later, that same man had filed a fraudulent amendment to the deed, adding my brother as co-owner, using a power of attorney that I never signed. Victor Landry, my father's friend of 20 years, had helped Dean steal half of my parents' house. I stood in that records office, and I felt something crack inside my chest that was not my heart and was not my ribs, but was somewhere in between. It was trust. The specific kind of trust you place in a person because your father placed it there first. The kind you inherit like an heirloom and never think to question because questioning it would mean questioning your father's judgment, and Hank Kowalski's judgment was the most reliable thing in my world. Victor Landry had broken that. I walked out of the St. Louis County Recorder's office with a folder full of photocopies and a heart rate that could have powered a small generator. I had the purchase agreement with one name, the deed with two names. The amendment filed 55 days after closing. The forged power of attorney. And now, the name of the man who had made it all possible. A man my father called Vic. A man my mother called a friend of the family. Gerald Ostrowski, you, beautiful, meticulous, tie clip-wearing man. I owe you more than you know. What I did not have was a plan. Not yet. And what I really did not have was any idea that Dean was about to make everything 100 times worse. I did not sleep that night. Gus slept. Gus slept like a creature with absolutely no awareness of property fraud or forged signatures, which, to be fair, he is. He curled up on the pillow next to mine and purred like a small engine idling, and I lay there in the dark staring at the ceiling, trying to assemble the pieces into something that made sense. Dean, Landry, the deed, the forged power of attorney, 55 days. The closing paperwork that Landry had helped me sign, sitting across from me at his desk on Michigan Street, smiling, telling me I was doing a good thing. And then, less than 2 months later, using that same knowledge, that same access, to file a fraudulent amendment that gave my brother half ownership of a house he had never paid for. I kept circling back to one question. Why? Dean made good money as a broker. Not great money, but good money. He leased a BMW Tiffany remodeled kitchens and bought $400 pillows. They were not struggling. So why go through the trouble of forging a signature and committing fraud for a house in Duluth worth $410,000? Half of that was $205,000. Significant, sure. But worth a felony? Worth risking your career, your family, your freedom? That question would be answered soon. But not by Dean, by a public record. The next morning, while I was sitting at my kitchen table with cold coffee and a headache that started somewhere behind my left eye and extended to the base of my skull, my phone buzzed. Group text. The family group text that Tiffany had created 2 Christmases ago, the one with the hollyberry emoji in the name and a profile picture of Lily in a Santa hat. I had muted it 9 months ago after Tiffany sent 14 consecutive photos of her new backsplash, but the notification still came through. Dean had written, "Great news. Been working on getting mom and dad into a more comfortable living situation. Got a meeting with an interested buyer next Thursday the 12th. This is going to be a really positive change for everyone." Thursday the 12th. I counted the days on my fingers like a child doing math. 12 days. 12 days. And I was looking at a legal process that, according to everything I had read online between midnight and 4 in the morning, could take months. I called the legal aid hotline I had found through the Minnesota State Bar's website at 7:45 in the morning, which was 15 minutes before they opened, and I sat on hold listening to a recording that told me my call was very important. It told me 9 times. I counted. The word important starts to sound like a foreign language after the 6th repetition. I ended up speaking with a paralegal named Janine, who sounded like she was already 2 emergencies deep into her morning. I explained the situation as concisely as I could. Forged power of attorney. Brother added himself to the deed. House I paid for entirely with my own money. Family attorney facilitated it. Janine typed while I talked. I could hear the keyboard through the phone, rapid and efficient, the typing of a woman who had heard a lot of bad stories and was categorizing mine somewhere in her mental filing system. "Okay," she said. "So, The good news is, if the power of attorney was indeed forged, the amendment to the deed is fraudulent and can be challenged. You would need to file a quiet title action. That is a legal proceeding to establish clear ownership. Great. How fast? Typical timeline is 3 to 6 months. My stomach did not drop. It had already dropped so many times in the past few weeks that it had taken up permanent residence somewhere around my ankles. 3 to 6 months? I have 12 days. Courts do not move in 12 days, ma'am. Not even with fraud. I thanked Janine. She wished me good luck in the tone of someone who meant it, but also knew that luck was not going to be enough. I hung up and sat there. 12 days versus 3 to 6 months. The math was simple and devastating. That afternoon, Connie Mickelson stopped by my desk at the clinic. Connie is my coworker, the clinic office manager, and the kind of woman who notices everything and says exactly what she thinks about it. She had seen me on the phone that morning, seen my face, and had apparently decided to investigate on her own time, because Connie does not wait for people to ask for help. She just helps, and then tells you about it afterward. She sat down across from me and slid a printed page across my desk. I did some digging, she said. Public records, your brother's name plus street. Lewis County property records plus a few other searches I know how to do because my ex-husband tried something similar with our cabin in Grand Marais, and I learned things during that process that I wish I did not know. I looked at the page. It was a lien filing, recorded 4 months ago, North Point Credit Union, $88,000, secured against the property at Hillside Avenue, Duluth, Minnesota. Borrower listed as Dean Kowalski, co-owner. Dean had taken a mortgage out on my parents' house. Not a potential sale, not a future plan. A mortgage, already done, 4 months ago. $88,000 borrowed against a house he had no legal right to own, using a co-ownership status he had obtained through forgery. Connie watched my face while I read it. She did not say anything for a moment. Then she said quietly, "There is more. The loan was for a condo development project in Minneapolis, Lakeview Terrace." I looked it up. She slid a second page across the desk, a news article from a Minneapolis business journal dated 6 weeks earlier. Lakeview Terrace condo development files for bankruptcy. Investors face significant losses. Dean had borrowed $88,000 against my parents' house to invest in a condo project that had already gone bankrupt. The money was gone, the loan was not. And somewhere in a credit union office, a clock was ticking toward the moment when North Point would start asking questions about their collateral. My parents' house was not just being threatened with a sale, it was being threatened with foreclosure. Dean had not just put his name on the deed. He had used the deed to gamble, and he had lost. And now the house I had paid $131,800 for was collateral for a debt that was not mine, on a property that was not his, for a project that no longer existed. I looked at Connie. Connie looked at me. Her coffee was sitting on my desk, untouched, which for Connie was the equivalent of a 5-alarm emergency. "How bad is this?" I asked, even though I already knew. Connie picked up her coffee, took a sip, made a face. Even she did not like her own coffee. "It is bad," she said. "But it is not over. Not yet." I left the clinic early that afternoon, told Connie I needed air. She nodded and did not ask where I was going, which was good, because I did not know where I was going. I just needed to not be sitting at a desk pretending to work while my parents' house was being swallowed by a debt my brother had created. I drove. No destination. Just drove. Duluth in late November is not a city that invites aimless driving. The streets were salt-streaked and gray, and the sky looked like someone had draped a wool blanket over it and forgotten to take it off. I ended up in the parking lot of a Walgreens on Superior Street, which is not where anyone goes for a spiritual crisis, but life does not consult you about the backdrop when it decides to break you. I parked, turned off the engine. The windshield started fogging up almost immediately because that is what happens when you sit in a car in Minnesota in November and breathe. Through the fog, I could see a sliver of Lake Superior between the buildings across the street. The water was steel-colored and flat and enormous, the way it always is when the weather cannot decide what it wants to do. The late afternoon light was hitting the lake at an angle that turned everything gold and silver at the same time, and the whole scene looked like a postcard, which felt specifically insulting given the circumstances. Here is what I knew. My brother had forged my signature to add himself to a deed I paid for. He had used the help of a family attorney my father had trusted for 20 years. He had then used that fraudulent co-ownership to take out an $88,000 loan against the property, invested it in a condo project that went bankrupt, and lost every cent. The loan was still active. The credit union still held a lien on the house, and now Dean was trying to sell the house, presumably to pay off the loan, pocket whatever was left, and disappear into the next deal, while our parents ended up in a one-bedroom apartment in Superior, Wisconsin. And I had 12 days, and a legal system that needed 3 to 6 months, and $4,800 in my checking account, which was not enough for a retainer, let alone a court filing and attorney fees. I was sitting in that arithmetic when my phone rang. The screen said, "Dad." "Hey, Ray." His voice was thick again, the right side dragging, tired. Cold days were always harder. "Hey, Dad," Dean called. "Said everything is getting sorted out with the house. Said we should just trust family." He paused, said not to worry about the details. Trust family. Dean actually used those words. Trust family. The man who forged his sister's signature and mortgaged his parents' house for a condo deal that collapsed. Trust family. I wanted to laugh. I wanted to throw my phone through the foggy windshield into the Lake Superior postcard. "Dad, what exactly did he say?" Hank repeated what Dean had told him. A buyer was interested. They would come out ahead financially. The apartment in Superior was nice, ground floor, easy access. Dean had it all figured out. Dean was handling everything. He sounded real confident, Ray. You know how he gets. Yeah, I knew how he got. Dean had been confident his entire life. Confident when he borrowed Hank's truck and brought it back with a scratch across the tailgate that he never mentioned. Confident when he dropped out of his second semester and called it strategic repositioning. Confident when he turned a golf trip into a leadership conference and framed a fake certificate that still hangs in the hallway. Confident when he sat at Marge's kitchen table and told her that selling the house was the responsible thing to do. Dean could sell ice to a glacier and charge a delivery fee. He could sell sand to a beach and make the beach feel grateful. And right now he was selling our father a story about trust and family, while the walls of that family's house were literally collateral for his failed investment. "Dad, please do not sign anything. Anything at all. Not until I have figured some things out." Silence. The kind of silence where I could hear the Weather Channel in the background, volume low, barely audible. Hank had it turned down. He was listening to me more than he was listening to the forecast, and for Hank Kowalski, that is the loudest statement a man can make. "Okay, baby girl." There it was again. 2 words that carried more weight than Dean's entire vocabulary. I hung up and pressed my forehead against the steering wheel. The leather was cold. Everything was cold. The car, the air, the parking lot, the lake, the situation, my hands, the hollow space in my chest where optimism used to live. I cried. Again. The ugly kind again. I was getting very tired of the ugly kind. I wanted the movie kind just once. The single tear, the soft lighting, the meaningful pause. Instead, I got the Walgreens parking lot kind, the kind where you cry until your face hurts, and then you sit there feeling like an empty shell, and a stranger walks past your car with a bag of cold medicine and pretends not to see you, which, thank you, stranger. That was the right call. For about 10 minutes, I sat in that car and I thought about what it would feel like to quit, to call Marge and say, "Fine, sell the house, let Dean have what he wants, move to Superior. I will help you pack." I thought about how easy it would be to stop fighting, to let the current carry me, to be the version of Ray that everyone seemed to want me to be, the quiet one, the one who does not make trouble, the one who accepts that Dean is the golden child and that golden children are allowed to take whatever they want because that is how the family has always worked. I almost started the car, almost put it in reverse, almost drove home, fed Gus, and went to bed. Almost. But then the next morning, Connie Mickelson saved my life. Or at least she saved my parents' house, which at that point felt like exactly the same thing. She caught me at the coffee station in the break room at 7:42 in the morning. I know the time because the clock on the break room wall is directly above the coffee maker, and I was staring at it while the machine gurgled and sputtered like it was having a medical event. The coffee Connie makes in that machine could strip the paint off a tugboat. I have seen grown adults pour it down the sink when she is not looking. I once watched a new hire take a sip, make a face like he had been personally betrayed, and then switch to tea for the rest of his employment. The coffee is terrible. Connie knows it is terrible. She drinks it anyway, which is a level of self-awareness combined with stubbornness that I find oddly inspiring. I was pouring myself a cup because I had not slept and I needed something, even something that tasted like boiled regret, when Connie appeared beside me. She did not ask permission to sit down. She did not wait for an invitation. She looked at my face, which was puffy, which was blotchy, which was the face of a woman who had cried in a Walgreens parking lot the previous afternoon and then gone home and cried some more while a 14-year-old cat pressed his head against her shin, and she said 5 words. "You look like you lost a fight with Lake Superior. Sit down." I sat down. Connie Mickelson is 54 years old. She has been the office manager at the clinic for 11 years. She is a widow. Her husband Tom died of pancreatic cancer 6 years ago, and she does not talk about it often, but when she does, she talks about it the way you talk about weather. It happened. It was terrible. You keep going. She has a 27-year-old son in the Marines and a 24-year-old daughter who teaches kindergarten in Rochester. She has zero capacity for nonsense. Zero. If nonsense were a physical object, Connie would pick it up, put it in the trash, and wash her hands. She is 5'3" and built like a woman who has never once backed down from anything, including a medical records audit, a broken copier, or the time the clinic's plumbing backed up on a Monday and she handled it herself with a wrench and a vocabulary that would have made a sailor blush. I told her everything: the deed, the forgery, the power of attorney, Victor Landry, the $88,000 mortgage, the bankruptcy, the 12-day deadline, the 3 to 6 months, the Walgreens parking lot, all of it. Every piece of the disaster laid out across the break room table like a jigsaw puzzle with no edge pieces. Connie listened without interrupting. For Connie, this is the equivalent of a standing ovation. She sat with her arms crossed, her terrible coffee growing cold in front of her, and she did not say a word until I was finished. When I stopped talking, she was quiet for about 5 seconds. Then she said, "Your brother sounds like a real piece of work in a Brooks Brothers shirt. And this Landry character sounds like the kind of lawyer who gives lawyers their reputation." She paused. Then, softer than I expected from Connie, because Connie is not a soft woman, she said, "My brother-in-law tried something like this, Tom's brother, after Tom died. Went after our cabin in Grand Marais. Said Tom had promised it to him. Which was a lie, but lies are easy when the person who can contradict you is gone." She looked at her coffee. "I fought him. Took 8 months, a lot of money I did not have, and about 40 pounds of paperwork. But I fought him, and I won. Because the documents were on my side, and the truth was on my side, and eventually the law caught up with the rest of it. I am sorry, Connie. Do not be sorry. Be angry. Angry is useful. Sorry is not." She uncrossed her arms and leaned forward. "Now listen, you said the legal aid paralegal told you about a quiet title action. 3 to 6 months. That is the standard route. That is the slow route. That is the route for people who have time. You do not have time." "No, I do not. There is another option. My cousin Ruth used it when she handled my cabin case. It is called an emergency injunction. If you can show the court that there is active fraud and that you are about to suffer imminent harm, meaning someone is about to sell your property or foreclose on it in the next 12 days, a judge can issue a temporary restraining order. It freezes everything. No sale, no transfer, no foreclosure. It is not a final ruling. It just stops the bleeding and buys you time." I stared at her. My terrible coffee was getting cold. I did not care. "How much time?" "Enough. Ruth's case took about 4 weeks to resolve after the restraining order was granted. The key is you have to prove 3 things. You provided all the money for the property. The power of attorney was forged. And there is an active, imminent attempt to sell or otherwise dispose of the property." "Connie, I have all 3 of those things." She looked at me. "I know you do. That is why I am telling you." She picked up her coffee, took a sip, made the face. The same face she always makes, the face that says, "This is terrible and I am going to drink it anyway because that is who I am." "My cousin's name is Ruth Abramson. She is an attorney here in Duluth, specializes in elder law and real estate fraud. She handled my case, and she does not lose. I do not mean she wins most of the time. I mean she does not lose. I have her number. Connie, I do not know if I can afford an attorney right now. Call Ruth. Tell her I sent you. Let her worry about the rest. She slid a business card across the table. White card, simple font. Ruth Abramson, attorney at law. Elder law. Estate disputes. Real estate fraud. Then Connie looked at me with an expression that was equal parts impatience and affection, which is Connie's entire emotional range compressed into a single look, and said, "Then why are you sitting here looking like a drowned cat? Go make some phone calls." I went to my car. I sat in the parking lot of my own workplace and called Ruth Abramson. She answered on the second ring, which already made her my favorite person. I told her everything. She listened. She asked 6 very specific questions. How much did I pay in total? When was the original closing date? When was the amendment filed? Did I have copies of the original signature and the forged one? Was there a scheduled buyer meeting? Was there an active lien on the property? I answered every one. Then Ruth Abramson said 7 words that I will remember for the rest of my life. Can you get me everything by tomorrow? Yes, I can have it to you by tomorrow. Then let's move. Let's move. The 2 most beautiful words in the English language. Right after free refills and no assembly required. Saturday morning, 3 days before Ruth Abramson would file anything with any court. 3 days before the legal system would get involved. I did something that mattered more than any motion or any restraining order. I drove to Hillside Avenue with a blue folder, not the brown envelope. That comes later. This was a different folder, a blue one, the kind you buy in a pack of 12 from the office supply aisle at Target for $3.49. Inside it was every document that told the truth about what Dean and Victor Landry had done. The original purchase agreement showing 1 buyer, Ray Kowalski. The deed amendment showing 2 owners, filed 55 days later. The power of attorney with a signature that was close to mine but wrong. My bank records, highlighted in yellow. Every payment to the title company. Every contractor receipt for the renovations. Every property tax payment, all from my accounts. All with my name. Only my name. And next to them, I had created a column labeled Dean's Financial Contributions. It was empty. I might have made the column extra wide so the emptiness was more visible. I might have even bolded the header. Was that petty? Sure. Did it make me feel better? Absolutely. Petty is underrated as a coping mechanism. I also brought the lien filing from North Point Credit Union, $88,000, and the news article about Lakeview Terrace filing for bankruptcy. I wanted Marge to see the full picture, not just the forgery, but what the forgery had been used for. I parked on Hillside Avenue at 9:15 in the morning. The maple tree was completely bare now. The gutters still needed cleaning. The ramp was solid under my feet as I walked up, and I thought about how $5,800 feels under your shoes when you know someone tried to steal it. Marge opened the door. She looked surprised to see me. We had not spoken much since the Raylan Marie phone call, and the silence between us had been the loud kind, the kind that fills a room even when nobody is in it. "Mom, I need to show you something, and I need you to look at it before you say anything." She studied my face for a moment. Whatever she saw there made her step aside. She put down the dish towel she had been holding. She always has a dish towel. I am starting to think it is a medical condition. We sat at the kitchen table. Hank was in the living room in his recliner by the window. The weather channel was on, but the volume was lower than usual, maybe 25. Hank had it turned down. He was listening. I spread the papers out in front of Marge, one by one. I did not explain. I did not narrate. I let the documents do the talking, because documents do not get emotional, and documents do not have a tone, and documents cannot be accused of tearing the family apart. Documents just say what they say. Marge is not a fast reader. She is a careful one. She went through every page the way she goes through everything, methodically, thoroughly, the way a retired nurse reads a chart. She looked at the purchase agreement. 1 name. She looked at the deed. 2 names. She looked at the dates. They did not match. She looked at the bank records. 1 column full, 1 column empty. Then she picked up the power of attorney. She held it close to her face, the way she does when her reading glasses are not quite strong enough, but she will not admit she needs a stronger prescription because admitting that would mean admitting something about getting older, and Marge Kowalski does not admit things about getting older. She stared at the signature for a long time. Then she got up from the table, walked to the refrigerator, and took something off the door. A birthday card. My birthday card. The one I had signed 3 years ago, a simple card with a drawing of flowers on the front that I had bought at the Walgreens on Superior Street, the same Walgreens where I had cried in the parking lot 4 days earlier, though I did not know I would cry there when I bought the card. Marge had kept it on the fridge with a magnet shaped like a loon, because Marge Kowalski keeps every card, every note, every scrap of paper anyone she loves has ever touched. Her refrigerator is a museum of family penmanship, layered 3 deep in some places. Birthday cards overlapping, Christmas cards overlapping, thank you notes from 1998. She held the birthday card next to the power of attorney. She looked at one, she looked at the other. The K in Kowalski. On my real signature, the upstroke is sharp, angular, like a small mountain. On the power of attorney, it was rounded, looped. The R in Ray. I always make the leg of the R with a slight kick at the bottom. A little flourish I have done since high school. The power of attorney R had no kick. And the final I in Kowalski. I always dot it with a small dash, not a dot. A dash. Like a tiny hyphen floating above the letter. The power of attorney had a round dot. Funny what you miss when you are forging someone's name in a hurry. Marge put the power of attorney down on the table. She pressed both palms flat against the surface. Her hands, with their swollen knuckles and their arthritis, were perfectly still. For the first time in weeks, they were not shaking. He forged your name. I nodded. Then I turned to the second page of the amendment filing, the one Gerald Ostrowski had pointed me to, the one with the name of the attorney of record. Marge read it. Her face did something I had never seen before. It went from anger to disbelief to something deeper, something that looked like grief. Vic did this? Victor Landry, Dad's friend, 20 years, Thanksgiving dinners, pumpkin pie. Vikings games in the recliner. Vic, who called her Margie. From the living room, Hank said one word. Marge. Just her name. That was all. But he said it in the way that 37 years of marriage teaches you to say a name. The way that means I am here, and I hear you, and I am sorry, all at the same time. Marge sat very still for about 10 seconds. Then she picked up her phone and dialed Dean's number. Come to the house, right now, and bring Tiffany. She did not raise her voice. That is what scared me. Marge Kowalski yelling as a thunderstorm. Loud, dramatic, over quick. Marge Kowalski quiet as a cold front that settles in and does not leave. And right now, the temperature in that kitchen was dropping fast. Dean said he would be there Saturday afternoon. He sounded cheerful on the phone. Easy. The voice of a man who thought he was being summoned for coffee and conversation. Maybe a discussion about the apartment in Superior. Maybe a chance to close the deal with Marge once and for all. He had no idea what was waiting for him in that kitchen. And I would be lying if I said I did not enjoy that. Just a little. Okay, maybe more than a little. Maybe I enjoyed it in a way that would make a therapist take notes. Between the phone call and 2:30 that afternoon, Marge Kowalski transformed her kitchen into a courtroom. I do not mean that literally. There was no gavel, no witness stand, no man in a robe. But there was something about the way she arranged that table that made it clear this was not a conversation. This was a proceeding. The papers were laid out in a neat row. Purchase agreement on the left, deed amendment in the center, power of attorney on the right, bank records behind them, my column full, Dean's column empty. The lien filing and the bankruptcy article behind those. Everything organized, everything squared, everything aligned. Because even in crisis, Marge Kowalski maintains a system. She had set out the good coffee cups, the white ones with the thin blue stripe around the rim, the ones she keeps in the upper cabinet and only brings down for company. Thanksgiving, Christmas, Pastor Lindgren's visit last Easter. I had not seen those cups since July when Aunt Bee came for Marge's birthday. The fact that Marge considered this occasion worthy of the good cups said something. I was not entirely sure what it said, but it said something. Hank was in his recliner, but he had angled it. Slightly, just a few degrees toward the kitchen. Close enough to hear everything, far enough to observe, without being in the center of it. Old welder habit, always know where the heat is coming from. Always know which direction the sparks are going to fly. There was also one additional person at the table when Dean arrived, and her presence requires some introduction. My Aunt B, Marge's older sister, 68 years old, retired police dispatcher for Street, Louis County, which means she spent 31 years listening to emergencies and directing responses while remaining completely calm, a skill she has carried into civilian life with terrifying effectiveness. B is built like a woman who walked to work uphill in Minnesota winters for 3 decades and considered it her morning exercise. She has a voice that can carry across a crowded room without raising in volume, which is a dispatcher's trick that she deploys in family settings with devastating precision. Marge had called B that morning and said 4 words, "I need a witness." B drove 50 minutes from 2 Harbors without asking a single question. That is sisterhood. That is also B, a woman who once told a cable repairman to get off her porch because he had not called ahead, and when he said he was there for a scheduled appointment, she said, "Scheduled by who?" "Because it was not scheduled by me, and this is my porch." The man left. He came back the next day. He called ahead. So the stage was set. Marge at the table with the papers and the good coffee cups. B beside her, arms crossed, expression neutral in the way that a loaded weapon is neutral. Hank in his recliner, angled toward the kitchen, cane between his knees. Me at the far end of the table, saying nothing because I had decided that this was not my show. I had brought the evidence. Marge was going to use it. Dean pulled into the driveway at 2:30 in his leased BMW X3. I watched from the kitchen window. The car alone cost more per month than our parents' property tax, which is a comparison I have made before and will continue to make until the day I die. Tiffany was in the passenger seat, doing something on her phone. She was wearing a cream-colored sweater and jeans that had cost $200 and come pre-ripped at the knee, which is fashion's way of saying I paid extra for less fabric. Lily was at Tiffany's sister's house for the afternoon, which turned out to be the one smart decision anyone in Dean's household made that month. Dean came in through the back door. He always used the back door. It was his way of saying, "This is still my house. I do not need to knock. I belong here." Which, according to a fraudulent deed amendment filed by a compromised family attorney, he technically did. For now. "Hey, Mom. Hey, Aunt B." He paused. "Ray." A nod. Nothing more. His smile was the one he used at open houses. Warm, practiced, the kind of smile that made people sign things. He kissed Marge on the cheek. My mother accepted the kiss the way a statue accepts rain. Present for it, not participating. Tiffany came in behind him, said hello to everyone in that bright surface-level way she says everything. Like every interaction is an Instagram caption waiting to happen. She leaned against the counter and took out her phone. She was going to check her phone during what was about to happen, which tells you everything you need to know about Tiffany's awareness of any room she is in. "Sit down, Dean." Marge's voice was flat, level. The temperature in the room dropped another 2 degrees. B had not moved, had not uncrossed her arms, had not changed her expression. B was a woman who had spent 31 years listening to car accidents and domestic disturbances and missing persons reports come in over a radio, and she had learned that the most powerful thing you can do in a crisis is be completely still and completely present. Dean sat down, still smiling. He glanced at the papers on the table but did not look closely. He probably assumed they were related to the apartment in Superior. The next step in his plan, the final piece of the campaign. Marge pushed the papers across the table toward him. She did not slide them. She pushed them. There is a difference. Sliding is casual. Pushing is a statement. Explain these. Dean looked down. His smile did not disappear. It reorganized, shifted, rearranged itself from happy to see you into let me handle this, which was the smile of a man who had spent his entire career handling things and had never once encountered a thing he could not handle. He was about to. Dean looked at the papers on the table. He did not pick them up. He scanned them the way a man scans a restaurant menu when he has already decided what he wants and is just going through the motions. Then he looked up at Marge with that smile, the rearranged one, the let me handle this one, and he said the first thing that came to his mind. "Mom, this is what I was talking about, the estate planning. This is all part of the process." Marge did not blink. She did not move. She sat with her hands flat on the table, palms down, the way she had pressed them when she first saw the forged signature, and she said, in a voice so flat it could have leveled a parking lot, "I did not ask about estate planning, Dean. I asked you to explain why your name is on a deed that your sister paid for, and I am asking you to explain this." She tapped the power of attorney with one finger. One tap. That is all. This signature. This is supposed to be Ray's signature. Ray says she did not sign it. Dean glanced at me. I did not say anything. I did not need to. The documents were doing the heavy lifting, and I was content to let them. I had spent my whole life reading documents. It felt right that documents were fighting this battle for me. Okay, look. Dean leaned back in his chair, still smiling, but the smile was thinning at the edges, like paint wearing off a surface that was never properly primed. There has been a miscommunication here. Did you forge your sister's name? Mom, that is a really strong word. It is a really simple question. Did you sign Ray's name on this form? Yes or no? The kitchen was so quiet I could hear the refrigerator humming. I could hear the clock on the wall above the stove, the one Marge had bought at a craft fair in 2011 that was shaped like a coffee cup and that I had always thought was ugly but would never say so. Tick, tick, tick. Somewhere outside, a neighbor's dog barked twice and stopped, like even the dog knew this was not the time. Dean shifted in his chair. The confident real estate broker, the golden son, the man who could sell ice to a glacier and charge for delivery. And he was squirming at his mother's kitchen table like a 13-year-old caught with a failing grade he had hidden in his backpack. He tried 3 approaches. I watched them the way I watch insurance coding errors scroll across my screen at work, methodically, noting each one. First, the redirect. He sat up straighter, broadened his shoulders, and said, "The important thing here is Mom and Dad's financial future. I have been working really hard to make sure you two are taken care of, and I think if we focus on the bigger picture, instead of getting caught up in paperwork details, we can find a solution that works for everyone." Marge looked at him. Same flat expression, same level voice. "Did you sign your sister's name on this form, Dean? Yes or no?" Second, the minimization. He waved one hand slightly, a small dismissive gesture, the kind of gesture a man makes when he wants something to shrink. It was an administrative shortcut. It happens in real estate all the time. I was just streamlining the process. Nobody was trying to hurt anyone. Marge did not move. "Did you sign your sister's name on this form? Yes or no?" Third, the sympathy play. And this is the one that made my jaw tighten, because this is the one where Dean lowered his voice and leaned forward and softened his eyes and became, for 30 seconds, the version of himself that our mother had always wanted to believe was real. "Mom." His voice was almost gentle. "I was trying to protect this family. I was trying to make sure you and Dad were taken care of. Everything I have done, every decision I have made, has been about making sure you two are okay. I love you. I love Dad. I love this family. That is all this has ever been about." I watched Marge's face. For one terrible second, I thought it might work. I thought 30 years of he is your brother might rise up and swallow everything, the evidence, the forged signature, the mortgage, all of it. And Marge would reach across the table and take Dean's hand and say something about family and forgiveness and moving forward. She did not. "You were trying to sell our house," Marge said, "the house Ray paid for, every cent of it. And you were going to keep the money, and you used Ray's name without her permission to do it." She paused. "And you borrowed $88,000 against this house for a deal that went bankrupt. You put a lien on the roof over our heads to fund your investment, and you lost it, all of it." Silence. The kind of silence that has weight. The kind you can feel pressing against your eardrums. The refrigerator hummed. The ugly clock ticked. The dog outside did not bark again. Then Hank spoke. Everyone turned. Hank had not said a word in 20 minutes. He was leaning forward in his recliner, slightly, carefully, his cane between his knees, his good hand resting on top of it. His face was doing the thing it does on tired days. The right side, not quite keeping up with the left, but his eyes were clear. Absolutely clear. "Your sister emptied her bank account for this house," he spoke slowly. Not for drama, because the right side of his mouth needed a second to catch up. "She paid for the ramp so I could get up the steps. She paid for the bars in the bathroom so I do not fall. She paid for the roof so your mother does not have buckets in the living room when it rains. She paid for the water heater so we have hot water in January. She paid for every single thing in this house that keeps your mother and me safe and comfortable and alive." He paused, took a breath. The cane shifted slightly between his knees. "What did you pay for?" Four words from a 69-year-old man with a bad right side and a cane in a recliner angled toward the kitchen. 4 words that fell into that silence like stones into still water and sank all the way to the bottom. Dean opened his mouth. Nothing came out. Not a word. Not a syllable. Not even a breath that sounded like it might become a word. His mouth was open and it was empty, and it stayed that way for 5 full seconds, which does not sound like a long time until you are sitting in a kitchen watching it happen. The most expensive silence I have ever heard. Aunt B had not moved, had not uncrossed her arms, had not changed her expression, but I saw her jaw tighten. Just slightly, the way a dispatcher's jaw tightens when she hears something come over the radio that she knows is going to be bad. Marge was not finished. "And Victor Landry," she said. Dean's face, which had already gone white, went gray. Not angry gray, not embarrassed gray, empty gray. The color a person turns when the last wall falls down and there is nothing left to hide behind. "You brought Vic into this?" Dean did not answer the question about Victor Landry. He did not answer because there was no answer that would help him. Yes meant he had recruited a trusted family attorney into a fraud scheme. No meant he was lying, and the paperwork was sitting right there on the table with Landry's name printed on it in black ink that was not going to change no matter how long Dean stared at it. So Dean did the only thing he had left. He tried to stand up. Marge stood up first. There is a thing that happens when Marge Kowalski stands up in her own kitchen. The room reorganizes around her. Not because she is tall, she is not. She is 5'4" and has been shrinking slightly every year since she turned 60, a fact she disputes with the same energy she disputes needing stronger reading glasses. But when Marge Kowalski stands up with intention, with that particular straightness in her spine and that particular stillness in her hands, the room knows. The furniture knows. The ugly clock on the wall knows. Even the refrigerator seems to hum a little quieter. She did not raise her voice. She did not need to. What she did was worse. She spoke at exactly the same volume she had been using for the last 20 minutes, that flat, level, ice-over-deep-water voice, and she laid out what was going to happen next with the precision of a woman who had spent the last 3 hours thinking about every word. "Here is what is going to happen, Dean. You are going to contact Ruth Abramson. She is Ray's attorney. You are going to sign whatever needs to be signed to remove your name from that deed. You are going to cancel the meeting with the buyer. And you are going to resolve the mortgage with North Point Credit Union. I do not care how. That is your problem. You created it. You fix it." She paused, not for breath, for effect. "You are not welcome in this house until all 4 of those things are done. Not for dinner, not for a visit, not with Lily. Do not bring that child into this mess. She does not deserve to be in the middle of it." Dean opened his mouth. "Mom, you cannot just—" "I already have." Marge's voice did not rise. It did not waver. It was the voice of a woman who had made a decision and cemented it into the foundation of her own kitchen floor. "I called Aunt B this morning. She knows. She is sitting right there, and she knows everything. I called Uncle Raymond an hour ago. He knows. I am calling Pastor Lindgren after you leave." She paused again. "By Sunday, every person at Grace Lutheran who has ever heard you say you take care of your parents is going to know exactly how you take care of them. Every person at the church potluck, every person in the auxiliary, every person who shook your hand and said what a good son you are is going to know what you did with your sister's signature and your father's house." The room was so still I could hear Tiffany's phone buzz against the counter behind me. A notification, probably Instagram, probably someone liking her most recent post. Probably the one about family being everything. Dean's face had passed through white and through gray and had arrived at something I had never seen on him before. It was not anger. It was not shame, though shame was in there somewhere, buried under layers of self-preservation. It was the look of a man who has just realized that the thing he valued most, the image, the reputation, the golden child pedestal he had been standing on for 39 years, was gone, not cracked. Not wobbling. Gone. shattered on the kitchen floor between the good coffee cups with the thin blue stripes. "You are going to regret this," he said. The last refuge of a man with no moves left, a sentence so empty it echoed off the walls and came back even emptier. Marge picked up the dish towel she had set down when I arrived that morning. She started wiping the counter, did not look at him, did not give him her eyes, gave him the dish towel and the counter and the back of her head, which, in Marge Kowalski language, is the most devastating dismissal a person can receive. "I have been regretting things for 34 years, Dean. I am used to it." Dean stood up. He looked at me. I looked back. I did not say anything because there was nothing left to say that Marge and Hank had not already said better than I ever could. He looked at Aunt B, who was sitting with her arms crossed and an expression that could curdle milk at 50 paces. B did not move, did not blink. 31 years of dispatch training. The woman could outstare a glacier. He looked at his father. Hank had already turned back toward the window. He was looking at the lake, or where the lake would be if the clouds were not in the way. His good hand was on his cane. His bad hand was resting on his knee. He did not look at Dean. He had said what he needed to say, and Hank Kowalski does not repeat himself. Dean walked out the back door, the same door he had walked through 1,000 times, the door he always used because it made him feel like he still lived here. This time, it did not close gently behind him. It did not slam either. It just closed. The most ordinary sound in the world, and somehow the loudest thing I had heard all day. Tiffany was already in the BMW. She looked up from her phone as Dean got in. I could see her mouth moving through the window, asking what happened, what is going on, why did that take so long? Dean did not answer. He started the engine. The BMW backed out of the driveway, past the maple tree, past the ramp, past the house that he had tried to take and had lost. Was it petty that part of me wanted to wave? Yeah, did I wave? I will let you decide. Marge did not watch them leave. She was wiping the counter. The counter was already clean. She wiped it anyway. Then she put the dish towel down, picked up her phone, and dialed a number. "Vitz, this is Marge Kowalski." Her voice was calm, controlled. The cold front had not lifted. If anything, it had deepened. "I know what you did with my daughter's signature and my son's deed. I know you filed that amendment. I know you helped Dean borrow $88,000 against our house. You sat at this table, Vic. You ate my pie. You watched football with Hank. And you did this." Silence on the other end. I could not hear Landry's response, but I could imagine it. The stammering, the backpedaling, the professional politeness of a man whose career was suddenly standing on very thin ice in a Minnesota November. "You have 24 hours to call Ruth Abramson. She is Ray's attorney. You will cooperate fully. If I do not hear from Ruth by tomorrow evening that you have called, I am contacting the Minnesota State Bar Monday morning. And Vic?" She paused. "Hank knows." 2 words, and then she hung up. Click. No goodbye, no closing statement. Just Hank knows, and the sound of a phone call ending, and the silence that followed, which was the loudest silence of the entire day. Marge put her phone down on the counter. She picked up the dish towel. She started wiping the table again. Left side, right side, center. Like she had just finished taking out the trash. Which, in a way, she had. Monday morning, Ruth Abramson filed the emergency injunction with St. Louis County District Court. I know it was Monday morning because Ruth called me at 8:14 to confirm she had submitted everything, and her voice had the tone of a woman who had already been working for 2 hours and was just getting started. Ruth Abramson does not do slow mornings. Ruth Abramson does not do slow anything. The evidence package she submitted was comprehensive in the way that only a woman who specializes in real estate fraud can make comprehensive. My bank statements showing every dollar I had paid toward the property. The original purchase agreement with one name on it. The deed amendment filed 55 days later with 2 names on it. The forged power of attorney with a signature that did not match mine in 3 specific documented ways. The K, the R, the dot that should have been a dash. The mortgage filing from North Point Credit Union for $88,000 secured against a property using co-ownership status obtained through forgery. The bankruptcy filing for Lakeview Terrace proving the loan money was gone. And the name of the attorney of record who had facilitated the entire thing, Victor Landry, Landry Law Office, 214 West Michigan Street. Ruth had told me on the phone that Sunday evening, the night before she filed, that emergency injunctions are not common. Judges do not hand out temporary restraining orders on property disputes the way they hand out parking tickets. You have to show imminent harm. You have to show fraud. You have to show that without court intervention, the damage will be irreversible. You basically have to walk into a courtroom and say, "This house is on fire and I need you to turn on the hose right now." Ruth had all of that and more. She had a forged signature. She had a fraudulent mortgage. She had a scheduled buyer meeting in 8 days. She had a 69-year-old stroke survivor who needed to be 14 minutes from his VA neurology clinic. And she had a daughter who had paid $131,800 for a house that was being stolen out from under her family by her own brother and a trusted family attorney. Tuesday afternoon, 33 hours after Ruth filed, a street Lewis County District Judge reviewed the filing, examined the evidence, and issued a temporary restraining order freezing any sale, transfer, or encumbrance of the property on Hillside Avenue, Duluth, Minnesota. The order also froze the North Point Credit Union mortgage, pending investigation into the legitimacy of the co-ownership claim used to secure it. 33 hours. The legal system, which I had been told, moved at the speed of glacial drift, which in Minnesota felt like a particularly appropriate metaphor, had moved in 33 hours. One day, 9 hours. Less time than it takes to binge a television series. Less time than it takes for Gus to forgive me for being late with his breakfast, which for the record is never. Ruth told me later that the judge had reviewed the forged signature evidence personally, had compared the documents side by side, had looked at the K, the R, the dash that was a dot, had noted that the attorney of record for the fraudulent amendment was the same attorney who had handled the original closing, which meant that Victor Landry had access to my real signature, had studied it, and had still gotten it wrong. The judge had not been pleased. Judges, as it turns out, do not appreciate it when attorneys use their professional access to facilitate forgery. It tends to make them act quickly. Dean found out on Wednesday. Not from me, not from Marge, not from Ruth. He found out because the buyer's real estate agent called Lakeshore Commercial Partners in Minneapolis to report that the title company had flagged a hold on the Hillside Avenue property. The call came into Dean's office, in front of his colleagues, in the middle of a workday. I did not plan that. I did not need to. The legal system does not care about your work schedule or your professional reputation. It just does what it does, and it did it on a Wednesday afternoon in Dean's open plan office. I do not know what Dean told his colleagues. I do not know what he told Tiffany. I do not know what he told himself in the car on the way home that evening, driving his leased BMW through Minneapolis traffic, knowing that his name was about to come off a deed he had stolen and a mortgage he had taken out fraudulently was about to be voided, and the attorney who had helped him was about to lose his license. I do know that Victor Landry called Ruth Abramson the next morning, Thursday, less than 24 hours after Marge's ultimatum. Marge had given him 24 hours, and Landry had used 23 of them, which tells you that he spent at least 22 of those hours pacing and sweating before picking up the phone. Landry cooperated fully. Ruth said he sounded like a man who understood that cooperation was the only thing standing between him and a criminal referral. 3 weeks later, the court issued a final ruling. Dean Kowalski's name was removed from the deed. The property on Hillside Avenue was restored to its rightful and sole owner, Ray Kowalski. The North Point Credit Union mortgage was voided as fraudulent. The credit union would have to pursue Dean directly for the $88,000, which was Dean's problem now, and I cannot say I felt sorry about that. Ruth also filed a formal complaint with the Minnesota State Bar regarding Victor Landry, facilitating real estate fraud, breach of fiduciary duty, misuse of professional access. Landry's law license was suspended pending a full investigation. Victor Landry, who had sat at Marge's table and eaten her pie and called her Margie, was no longer allowed to practice law in the state of Minnesota until further notice. I thought about Hank sitting in his recliner, learning that his friend of 20 years had helped his own son steal from his daughter. I thought about the word Marge had spoken into the phone. Hank knows. 2 words that carried 20 years of broken trust. My legal fees came to $2,300, paid in 2 installments. That is what it cost to undo what Dean and Landry had done. $2,300 to recover $131,800 and a house and a ramp and grab bars and a roof and a place that was 14 minutes from the VA clinic. That is the best return on investment I will ever see in my life. But that is not the part I want to leave you with. The courts and the filings and the restraining order and the suspended license, those are the mechanics. They are important, they are necessary. But they are not the heart of this story. The heart of this story is a Thursday evening in early December. Cold enough for a jacket, but not cold enough for a coat. That 2-week window in Minnesota where the weather cannot make up its mind, where the air smells like it is thinking about snow but has not committed yet. Early December in Duluth is a pause. The world holds its breath between autumn and winter, and everything goes still and silver, and the lake turns the color of old pewter, and the light comes in low and sideways through the trees, like it is trying to sneak past without being noticed. I drove to Hillside Avenue after work. It was a Thursday. I did not have groceries in the trunk. I did not have medication to deliver. I did not have a folder, blue or otherwise. I just drove there. Because I wanted to, and because I could, and because the house was still there, on the same street, with the same maple tree in the front yard, bare now, its branches dark against the sky like cracks in a gray ceiling. The gutters still needed cleaning. I noticed that as I pulled in, they always needed cleaning. I am starting to think the gutters on that house exist purely as a reminder that some things in life are permanent, and one of those things is the guilt of a homeowner who knows she should get up on a ladder but keeps finding reasons not to. Maybe I will clean them this weekend. I have been saying that since October. Hank was on the front porch. He was sitting in the Adirondack chair, the resin one from Menards, hunter green, with a built-in cup holder on the right arm, that Hank considers the single greatest engineering achievement of the 21st century. He has said this multiple times. He said it the day I bought the chair. He said it the day he first put a coffee mug in it. He said it last week when I brought him decaf, and he said it in the holder and looked at it the way some men look at a new truck. Hank Kowalski loves that cup holder with a sincerity that I find both endearing and slightly concerning. He had a mug of decaf in the holder. A crocheted blanket over his knees, the one Marge made 3 winters ago from a pattern she found in a magazine, cream and blue, slightly uneven on one side because Marge will not admit that her tension gets looser when she watches television and crochets at the same time. His cane was leaning against the porch railing within reach. His good hand was resting on the arm of the chair. His face was doing the thing it does on cold days. The right side, a little slower, a little heavier. But his eyes were open and clear and looking at something far away. The lake. You could see it from the porch on clear days, just a strip of it between the houses across the street, silver and enormous and ancient. Today it was not quite clear, but it was not quite cloudy either. The lake was there, the way it always is, the way Lake Superior has been there for 10,000 years, and will be there for 10,000 more. And it does not care about deeds or mortgages, or forged signatures, or brothers who steal, or attorneys who betray. The lake just is. I have always found that comforting. Hank finds it comforting too, though he would never use that word. He would say something like, "It is a good lake," and that would be enough. I sat down on the porch step. The ramp was to my left, solid under the railing, $5,800 of pressure-treated lumber and aluminum handrails that I had paid for and that Hank used every single day to get up and down the steps without asking for help. The ramp that Phil Bremer had photographed on that Wednesday in November, clipboard in hand, measuring it like it was inventory. The ramp that was still here, still solid, still doing its job. A neighbor's dog barked somewhere down the block. One bark, then quiet. The air smelled like pine and cold water and the faintest trace of whatever Marge was making inside. Something with onions. Something warm. Hank did not say anything. He did not need to. We sat there for a while, and the quiet between us was not the empty kind or the heavy kind or the avoiding something kind. It was the kind of quiet that only exists between two people who have been through something together and come out the other side and do not need to narrate it. The kind of quiet that is itself a conversation. Then Hank reached over with his good hand and squeezed my shoulder. His grip was still strong. 36 years of welding will do that to a hand. He did not say a word. He just held on for a second, maybe two, the way you hold on to something you almost lost, and then he let go. Inside the house, I could hear Marge, a cabinet opening, the faucet running, the click of the stove burner turning on, a wooden spoon against the side of a pot, normal sounds, house sounds. The specific, irreplaceable sounds that only exist when someone is safe in a place that belongs to them. The sounds of a kitchen that is not for sale, the sounds of a home that is not collateral, the sounds of a woman making dinner for her husband in a house that her daughter paid for and fought for and kept. That brown envelope in my nightstand. The one I told you about at the beginning of this story. The one with the creased corner and my father's handwriting on the front. Hank gave it to me the next morning. He must have written it that night, after I left, sitting in that Adirondack chair, or maybe at the kitchen table after Marge went to bed. He slipped it under the front door of my apartment like a secret, and I found it Friday morning when I was leaving for work, lying on the mat next to a pair of shoes I keep meaning to put away. Just 2 words on the front, in Hank's handwriting, which is blocky and careful and slightly shaky on the right side of each letter. Thank you. I picked it up. I held it. I turned it over. I could feel something inside, a piece of paper, maybe a note, maybe something longer, but I did not open it. I have not opened it. 5 weeks now. I hold it sometimes. I run my thumb across his handwriting. I feel the weight of whatever is inside. Some things you do not need to open. Some things say everything they need to say through the paper, through the handwriting. Through the fact that a 69-year-old man with a bad right hand sat down and wrote 2 words because those were the only 2 words that mattered, and he wanted his daughter to have them in his handwriting, on paper, something she could hold. Thank you. I am holding it right now. I think about sacrifice a lot these days. Not the big dramatic kind. Not the kind they write about in history books or put in movies with swelling orchestras and slow-motion sequences. I think about the quiet kind. The kind that happens at a kitchen table on a Tuesday evening when nobody is watching. The kind that looks like packing a lunch instead of buying one. Driving a car with a scratch you never fix. Saying no to things you want so you can say yes to something that matters more. That kind of sacrifice does not come with applause. It does not come with a certificate or a trophy or even a thank you most of the time. It just comes with the knowledge that you did what you did because someone you love needed you to do it, and that was enough. But here is what I have learned, and I need to say this clearly, because it matters. Sacrifice deserves to be protected. Loving someone does not mean letting them take from you without limit. Giving everything you have for your family does not mean you are obligated to stand still while someone steals it back. There is a difference between generosity and surrender, and it took me a long time to understand where the line is. I almost did not find it. I almost let the current carry me. I almost let the word family become a door that locked from the outside. I believe God puts people in your path exactly when you need them. I did not find Connie in that break room by accident. I did not end up in front of Gerald and his tie clip by coincidence. I did not hear Ruth say, "Let us move," at the exact moment I needed to hear those words, because the universe was making small talk. God knew. God knew I was sitting on a floor with a cat pressing his head against my leg, and God knew I was in a parking lot watching the lake turn gold while my chest caved in. And God sent me the people I needed, one by one, like breadcrumbs on a trail leading out of the darkest woods I have ever been in. I am not a particularly religious person. I do not say that to qualify anything. I say it because I want you to understand that when I tell you I felt something larger than myself carrying me through the worst weeks of my life, I mean it in the most honest way I know how. There were moments, real moments, when I had no strength left and no plan and no money and no idea what to do next, and something kept me going. Call it God, call it grace. Call it whatever name feels right in your own heart. I call it God, and I am not ashamed of that, and I will say it again. God was in that story. In the filing cabinet and the records office and the break room coffee and the blue folder and the kitchen table and the porch. God was in my father's 2 words on a brown envelope. God is in the quiet places where people do the right thing, even when the right thing costs them everything. I think about family too. I think about what that word actually means versus what we have been told it means. I grew up in a house where family meant you do not question, you do not argue, you do not rock the boat. Family meant he is your brother, and that was the end of the conversation. Family meant swallowing things that should not be swallowed and smiling through things that should not be smiled through and pretending that love and obligation are the same thing. They are not. Love is my mother standing up in her own kitchen and choosing truth over comfort for the first time in 34 years. Love is my father turning down the television so he can listen. Love is an envelope slipped under a door with 2 words written by a shaky hand. Love is not a caption on a photograph. Love is not a fruit basket from a warehouse store. Love is not a word you use to keep someone quiet while you take what is theirs. Family is not blood. Family is what you do with your hands. Family is a ramp and grab bars and a roof that does not leak and a house that is 14 minutes from the clinic. Family is showing up with groceries when the pantry is empty, and your mother will not ask for help because she would rather eat crackers for a week than be a burden. Family is a filing cabinet and a folder and a woman who reads the fine print because someone has to. That is what I know now. That is what this story taught me. That is what I am still learning, sitting in my apartment with a cat who pushes pens off nightstands and an envelope I have not opened and a scratch on my car I will probably never fix. If this story touched something in your heart, if it made your chest tight or your eyes sting or your jaw clench the way mine still does when I think about that clipboard in the yard, I want to hear from you. Tell me in the comments. Have you ever had to fight for someone you love? Have you ever been the person who sacrificed everything and then had to fight to keep it? Have you ever been the quiet one who finally said enough? I read every single comment. I mean that. Everyone. It makes my whole day. Are you watching this at 2 in the morning with a cup of tea and a cat in your lap? I want to know. Are you on a lunch break in your car in a parking lot? Tell me. Are you sitting on a porch somewhere watching the weather change? I want to know that too. If you have not already, hit that subscribe button. Not for me, for the next story. Because there is always a next story, and some of them are going to make you laugh, and some of them are going to make you cry, and some of them are going to make you want to call your parents, or hug your sister, or check the fine print on something you signed a long time ago. Do not forget to share this with someone who needs to hear it, someone who is fighting right now, someone who is sitting on their own kitchen floor wondering if it is worth it. Tell them it is. Tell them to keep going. Tell them that the people who read the fine print are the ones who save the house. And if you think this story got your blood pressure going, honey, the next one on your screen might just send it through the roof. Click it. I dare you.